tonight because one of our board members, Melissa, is coming in remote. So it'll be roll call. And everything is, the links and information has been on the website. It's in the Zoom link. And I do believe that's it. That's a shortened version of that. So you're all welcome. Okay, we'll call the June 1st, 2022 Select Board meeting to order. There's no changes to the agendas that I know of. Announcements, Libby?
So first off, we've got the announcement of applications for another round of committee appointments that are coming up on June 22nd. And I think the idea here is we just announce the names, right? So we've got Historic District Commission Associate, no applicants. Nantucket Affordable Housing Trust, Chantal Blois Murphy, incumbent. Brian Sullivan, incumbent. Arlene O'Reilly, Jennifer Porter, Meg Browers, Rima Sherry, incumbent, and Peter Hoey. Nantucket Historical Commission, Linda Williams, Abby D. Molina, Clement Dirks, incumbent. Ethan McMorrow, Hillary Rayport, incumbent. Planning Board alternate, Abby D. Molina, Elizabeth O'Rourke, Campbell Sutton, incumbent. Real Estate Assessment Committee, Lee Saperstein, incumbent. Roads and Right-of-Way Committee, Bill Greeter, incumbent. Alan Reinhardt, incumbent. Rick Atherton, incumbent. Carrie McKenna. Scholarship Committee, Jean Miller, incumbent. Rebecca Woodley Oliver, incumbent. Tree Advisory Committee, no applicants. Zoning Board of Appeals, Susan McCarthy, incumbent. Zoning Board of Appeals alternate, no applicants. We also have applications that have been received for the Planning Board vacancy, and those names are as follows: Joseph Topham, Emily Kilvert, Jeremy Bloomer, Campbell Sutton. And that is it for announcements.
Thank you, Libby. And there's no follow-up on comments prior to select board meetings. Is there any public comment tonight that is not a subject that's not on our agenda? Anybody here in person or online? Please raise your hand or your digital hand. Let's give that a couple seconds. Okay, we'll move on. There's no new business that I know of. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of May 25th? Payroll warrants May 29th and treasury warrants for June 1st.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call. Dawn?
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
Brooke?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Jason, aye. That passes unanimously. Pending contract. Is there any questions for town manager? Libby, is there anything you wanted to go over? Pending contracts?
No, they're pretty straightforward.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call. Melissa, I'll just start with you each time, just so you know. Melissa?
Sure, okay. Aye.
And then Dawn?
Aye.
Brooke?
Aye.
Matt? Jason, aye. That passes unanimously. Consent items. We have a gift acceptance for Human Services, Salt Marsh Center. We now like to read those off. Let me pull that up. We have a gift of $85 from Stop and Shop for the Salt Marsh Center and a gift of $193.59 from Elder Services. Is there a motion to accept those gifts?
Motion to accept with a letter of thanks.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Melissa?
Aye.
Dawn?
Aye.
Brooke?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Jason, aye. That passes unanimously. Okay, Citizen Department Committee application introductions for Agricultural Commission down to Finance Committee. So I will just read off. There we go. Now you can hear me. Let me get to this. So first up is the Agricultural Commission. We have no applicants there. Airport Commission, we have Jeanette Topham and Walter Flaherty. Are any of those two people here that like to speak? And Erica, you'll help me look at the attendees online. If anybody raises their hand. Okay, moving on to Board of Health. We have 4 applicants: Ann Smith, Carrie McKenna, Allison Bold, and Richard Ray. Ann Smith, would you like to speak tonight? Oh, you can just come right up to the microphone and just state your name for the record, even though I already said it.
Hi, I'm Ann Smith. I am
very pleased to be here in person this year, because in the past, for these sorts of things, it was all Zoom. So this is a really nice thing. I have wanted to be a member of the Board of Health for a couple of years. And I think that maybe you'd like to know what I would bring. I am a nurse midwife and a women's health nurse practitioner. I have spent a long career doing all kinds of things having to do with women's health, from delivering babies to family planning. And in the last probably 10 years, I've been particularly interested in women's mental health. And I have been the chair of an organization known as Postpartum Support International, which supports and helps women with mental health issues throughout the country and the world. I also have a lot of experience in infectious disease, and as a year-round resident of Nantucket for the past 5 years, I have become interested in, aware of, and concerned with many of, through helping out with a couple of the food programs and things like that, the health issues of all islanders. And I feel that by serving on the Board of Health with my background, my medical background, nursing background, mental health background, I could hopefully bring a lot and have the interests of all Nantucketers at heart. So I hope you guys will consider me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Is Carrie McKenna here? Oh, I see that she's online. Yep. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Better?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, hi. Thanks for the opportunity to, present myself. I'm down visiting the grandkids right now. I've applied for this. We've been a resident of the island, full-time resident for 4 years, and vacation there for 21. And currently, after the COVID break, we was able to start volunteering at the COVID vaccination clinic and also at the food pantry. And it was through those interactions that started, getting a sense of the community, a better sense of the community. I'm a former special ed teacher and trainer, and I've worked across the spectrum of disabilities, medically fragile, intellectual disabilities, autism, etc. And the primary work I did was centered around having individuals with disabilities become fully included in daily community life with proper supports. And those proper supports ideally being as natural as possible in terms of using the resources of the local environment and community. The kind of things we work towards were including employment preparation, preparation for college, and just essentially living, learning, and working in the community. One of the things that I did, especially as a trainer for the last 13 years, was worked across 13 counties in New York State, the Hudson Valley, and was to improve communication among the stakeholders. So what we did a lot of times was build consortiums, and oftentimes the people who were the organization that acted as the base would be the local boards of health or the local boards of community mental health, since they were able to provide connection to community resources and government entities. In those capacities, also, one of the things we did a lot of was developing community resources and guides for accessing services, identifying and accessing services. And the latest thing we had done was called a post-secondary readiness rubric, which mouthful, emotional, it's about emotional well-being, and it focused on identifying how well a student is emotionally prepared for life post-secondary. And that was like kind of my work background. The other thing that, I think that as I worked with the Board of Health to get to clinics and also working at the food pantry was that the state of mental health on the island. Nantucket is a wonderful place. It's a caring community, but we are not immune to mental health concerns. My hope would be is potentially being a member of the Board of Health would be to help develop resource to help develop new tools to address the mental health needs, and in particular working hopefully with the education system and families to identify and support students' emotional needs. The sooner we can intervene, the better. And given some of between the COVID crisis and the last several weeks we've had with mass shootings, particularly in schools, that it has all these things just serve to exacerbate those issues. And as a small thing, I've got successful grant writing experience too. I guess the big thing in terms of what I learned in working with the families and schools and students and agencies was to use a strength-based approach. That you start from the student or the individual and work out. You don't start from the services and work in. And that the other thing is that one of the big mottos we used to have was that whenever someone is being talked about, it's like you don't talk about me without me. And essentially the stakeholders being a respected presence in these discussions. So that's kind of like my background. I want to help people and be part of the community. That's probably the simplest thing to say. So thank you for your time, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Carrie. Allison? I think Allison is here.
Hi, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Allison Bold. I've lived on Nantucket for 23 years and work at Nantucket Cottage Hospital. A little bit about my education background. I have a Bachelor of Science in Biology. I am a licensed medical technologist in the lab and just finishing up my MBA in healthcare administration. In 1999, I came here and worked at Nantucket Cottage Hospital as a medical technologist. About 10 years later, I became the lab manager. In that position, I was able to do tick-borne disease research with Mass General Hospital, which I loved. About 6 years later, Margot Hartman, the then CEO, approached me and asked me if I would take a promotion into a clinical lead for our electronic medical record. A little bit different than what I was doing, but I gladly took that job. And a year later, after our successful implementation, I continued to advance my career at Nantucket Cottage Hospital into what I do now, which I am the clinical lead of the clinical business and technology department. In that job, I do a lot of project management. My two biggest projects to date have been the new hospital, where I project manage the throughput of patients through all of the departments. The other project I worked on most recently was the COVID vaccine clinic, where I worked in conjunction with the Board of Health, almost talking to them on a daily basis. I also do data analytics. I work with the quality department. I am the lead of the patient experience and employee engagement. And also I have been on the Patient Family Advisory Council since its inception. I think that with my background in healthcare, my commitment to this island, its community, and its health, I would make a good candidate for this committee. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Allison. Just remind the board that we can ask questions or make comments if you like. I'm just going through them quickly, so just jump in if anybody wants to say anything. We have Richard Ray.
First, thank you for the privilege of being able to address the board this evening. I'm Richard Ray. I was the health inspector and health director for the town of Nantucket for 37 years. You have my forms in front of you, I believe, and I'm going to let my other credentials speak for themselves. I would rather move towards what I would propose to bring to the, excuse me, to the Board of Health. Obviously, there are concerns on this island related to public health and environmental health. I think one of the first things that we need to consider is perhaps a short rewrite of the fertilizer regulations. I don't know that they need to be completely overhauled. I sincerely believe that by using the groundwater contour maps, which you may or may not be familiar with, can lead us in a direction to try to reduce nutrient loading in a more positive way for the island. I also believe that, cheat sheet. I also believe that, again, the legislature is not going to approve a complete ban of fertilizers on Nantucket. But with the groundwater contour maps, we can modify our fertilizer regulation applications to more effectively reduce nutrient loading. With other regards to public health, obviously we are not out of the COVID woods yet. We are ranked number 5 in counties in the state of Massachusetts, or were a couple of days ago when I looked up the numbers. So we are still in a tentative arena with regard to COVID. My other areas of concern, of course, the human habitation, which was an area of concern through most of my 37 years, and also noise control. The town of Nantucket has a noise control bylaw, which I wrote, and it defines noise levels in every zone on the island. Now, what's lacking here is a noise control meter, a good noise control meter. We had one with a number of moves that we made as a health department. I'm not sure where it went. However, if we could purchase a new one, I think we could rein in a lot more of the noise control issues with regard to short-term rentals and neighbors. Again, I'm simply going to let my experience speak for itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, we're going to move backwards and go back to Airport Commission. If Jeanette or Walter happen to now be here, they'd like to speak, they can.
Good evening. I'm Jeanette Topham. I have served many boards in Nantucket and nonprofits since the early 1970s, and I have been on the Airport Commission for 2.5 terms, and I am looking forward to continuing to work and help the community of Nantucket. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeanette. Okay, that's so we had 4 for Board of Health, 1 speaker for Airport Commission out of 2. Move on to Capital Program Committee. Stephen Welch here or online? Just nothing? Okay, move on. That's only 1 seat and 1 applicant. Cemetery Commission, we have 1 seat and 1 applicant. It's Barbara White. Is she here? See her, Erica? Okay. Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee, we have 3 seats available and 4 applicants. We have Mary Longacre, Sarah Boyce, Joanne Roach, and Stephen Lindbach. So is Mary Longacre here or online? Online? Okay, we'll go to Mary. If she's not ready, maybe we just go to Sarah Boyce. Yeah.
Hello, this is Sarah Boyce. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Sarah.
Thanks. Thank you so much for letting me be here tonight. I am Dr. Sarah Boyce. I am currently the Director of Research and Education at the Linda Loring Nature Foundation. I've been serving on the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee since its inception. And however, I'm a at-large committee member, and I would love to continue to work with this group. In terms of what I feel like I've brought to the table so far as part of this committee, Certainly my knowledge as a scientist and a member of the conservation community, but also aside from being a scientist, I come to this group as a community member. So I'm a parent with a child in the public schools. I'm a small business owner, and our livelihood as a small business depends on the working waterfront, which is directly impacted by climate change and coastal resiliency issues. I'm very passionate about climate justice and making sure that our coastal resiliency projects moving into the future work for everyone as part of our community and not just the loudest voices in the room. As part of the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee, I helped start the Education Subcommittee and was its chair. And one of those, the results of that subcommittee was the Homeowners Information Guide, which actually the town manager just put in her newsletter the other day. So if you happy to see that getting out to the public. And so while, I have served on this committee for 3 years, I'm really passionate about this work, and the Coastal Resiliency Plan, which was just adopted this past winter, there's a lot of work to do moving forward. So this was just a first step, and I'd really like the opportunity to be able to use my skills and knowledge and the work that I've already put into this committee for the next steps, for working on helping see through our public projects. I also, we've done a lot of outreach and communication about the plan. I've helped give talks to our Youth Climate Committee group and others to help disseminate the information about the plan in lots of digestible bites. And I think that my skills as a scientific communicator can also help in that realm. I know that there are other conservation representatives on this group, but I just want to remind the select board that I represent myself, and as a community member, I bring my skills to the table from the conservation work I do, but I don't represent any one organization. I think of the island truly as a whole. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about that.
Any questions for Sarah? Nope. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Okay, is Mary ready? Mary, you can put your hand up whenever. Oh, there you go. Yep.
Thank you, Jason. I want to echo Sarah's words. The committee over the last 3 years has done a tremendous amount of work, and I'm happy and willing to continue to do that. As the chair, I have done the best that I can to make sure that we have the right inputs, that we are speaking to people off island as well as people on island, and trying to connect parts of the community so that this is an island-wide project and something that has broad community input. And I would be happy to continue doing that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary. Is Joanna Roach or Stephen Line back here? Stephen, go ahead.
Good evening, Stephen Leinbach. Thanks for hearing from me. I put my name in for this committee. I've monitored quite a few of the meetings and participated in a bunch of the workshops. When I put my name in, I was kind of under the impression they were looking for some extra help. I didn't realize all three incumbents were, coming back. But in case someone is not interested or someone feels that I might bring something different or, to the table. I've been on island for 61 years. I've lived on the harbor for 61 years. I've seen the changes, and what's gone on in the last 10 years is particularly frightening. When I was a child, we'd have clam bakes for 300 people there. Now, twice a month, 3 times a month on high tides, there is no beach at all. The erosion's gotten very bad. I've worked for 30 years as a licensed Coast Guard sport fishing captain in the marina, and I've seen the average tides on the docks, and those docks haven't changed since 1967. And the amount of times that the finger piers are underwater now is frightening. It's just coming very quickly, and it's time to do something. Since the action plan has been accepted, now I understand we're in the implementation plan. And I think going forward, moving with as much speed as we can for certain realistic parts of it that will start out the process is very important. We've even done our own little coastal resilience project in front of our house with the Concom approval. We've planted a bunch of Spartina grass to try and see if we can bring back part of the beds that have been washed away. And, you know, if that works, then it might be something that other homeowners and other people around the island can start doing. So thank you for your time. And if you think I can add something, I'm here to help.
Thank you, Stephen. Is Joanna Roach here? Okay. All right, we're going to move on to the Conservation Commission. There's 3 seats available and 8 applications. And let's go down the list here. Marcia Brown. Is she here to speak?
Marcia had reached out to me and said that she had an accident over the weekend, so she may or may not be able to join tonight.
Just let me know if she comes on.
And Maureen Phillips is unavailable this week and was hoping to speak next.
Okay. Seth Eagleberg, I see Seth here.
Good evening. My name is Seth Engelborg, and I'm seeking reappointment as an incumbent to the Conservation Commission. It's been my pleasure to serve the town on this commission over the last 3 years, and I hope for the opportunity to serve another term. Over my time on the Concom, I've endeavored to approach applications fairly and using always an ecologically sensitive approach. As one of the current members on the commission with a professional training in the natural sciences, I feel that I've brought my background in Nantucket's native species, its wetland areas, resource areas, and hydrology to the commission. I have strived to employ our regulations in an effective way to achieve the maximum benefit for our resource areas, and also while being fair to the applications and the applicants that we have before us. Many of my suggestions that I've brought to the commission over the past 3 years have since become common practice of the commission, have become accepted by commission members, the public, and applicants themselves. We're currently also in the process of updating our regulations, and I take great pride in this process because there's no one single better step we can take than to put effective regulations into place now that will better serve our goals in the future as we deal with climate change and sea level rise. And in order to do that, we need to update these regulations to ensure a resilient future. Beyond that, I have also sought professional development opportunities beyond the scope of the commission. I'm involved with the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions. I've attended their annual conferences each year, and I'm also doing their fundamentals certificate for conservation commissioners, which is an 8-course module. I've done 5 of these courses already. I have registered for a 6th that's in a week or 2, and I'm planning to take the other 2 in fall when they become available. Lastly, I just want to reiterate what a commitment the Concom is. Over the last 3 years, we've had about 100 meetings, totaling more than 300 hours total. That's more than 12 full 24 calendar days. And that does not include field viewings, reading the packet, preparing the applications, reading regulations. It's a big, intense process. And I just want to remind everybody that I've approached every meeting and every application with the same level of care and respect, no matter what application it is. I've always brought thoroughness to the table and my full effort in each application. So I asked the select board humbly to reappoint me to the Conservation Commission and to recognize the time, experience, and effort that I've put into the commission so far, so that I'm able to continue the work I've been doing for a next term. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Seth. I see Marcia Brown has come online. Marcia, if you're ready, you can raise your digital hand and Erica can get you in.
Hello?
Yep, go ahead. We can hear you.
Oh, okay, wonderful.
Hi, I'm Masha Brown. I'm a resident of Nantucket. This is my second time applying to serve on the Concom. I'm interested in doing this because, like many others, I love Nantucket and would like to give back. My career has been spent in medicine, not in conservation, but conservation has been very close to my heart. And now that I have more time, it's something that I intend to focus my energies on. My experience in medicine, being that it is science, has allowed me to learn how to analyze data and to make complex decisions based on taking multiple factors into an account. Also, I had the privilege of working at Nantucket Cottage Hospital for years as an oncologist down from Mass General, and I have to say that I learned so much from the residents of Nantucket as to how they view their island and things that are important to them. So first of all, I fully support the gentleman before me. He sounds absolutely fantastic, and he has a very wonderful background and is very motivated. But I, despite not having that type of a background, feel that I have had experience throughout my career making, as I said, complex decisions in medicine based on data as well as other factors. And therefore, I would like to serve on the Concom.
Thank you, Marcia. Okay, is Mike Mizzarelli here? Or online? Erica, nothing? Okay, let me know if he comes on. Joseph Plandowski.
My name's Joe Plandowski. I'm a year-round resident of Nantucket. Bought a home here about 15 years ago. Prior to that, spent 25 years in a timeshare at Brant Point. I have a long history of volunteer work. I spent 4 years as an AYSO soccer coach, 10 years as a Boy Scout adult leader, 15 years as a U.S. swimming official. Prior to the NHA taking over the Nantucket Basket Museum, I volunteered there. Currently, I'm on the Cannabis Advisory Board for the town. My education includes a bachelor's in mechanical engineering and a master's degree in business administration from the State University of New York. Conservation is an important issue. To personally learn more, 3 years ago, I installed a solar system on our house. That was a real education. Tomorrow, I'm having a heat pump installed that's going to replace propane as a heating source in our house. And I'm sure that also is going to be an education. I saw possible openings in the Conservation Commission, and I can tell you that I do not have an agenda other than to do what's right for the residents of this island. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Okay. Burton Balkine, he's here.
Thank you, Chairman Bridges, and happy anniversary.
Thank you.
And thank you, board. And Brooke, congratulations. I haven't seen you since the election. So I just wanted to add to my application that this is my second time applying. But I also wanted to impress upon the board how important the Concom is to Nantucket and the protection of our wetlands. It's the last line of defense for our wetlands and our ever-increasing buildup of Nantucket. And with that, I think Let me get work on. It's never gets easy talking in front of you guys. I don't know why. Okay, the last line of defense. So if the wetlands are degraded, our coastal resiliency is degraded, and our the whole Nantucket environment is degraded. So I'm asking you guys, in making your decision for applications for the COMCOM, please make the environmental decision and not the political one. Thank you.
Thank you, Bert. Is Tim Brain? Is he here? Hey, Tim.
Hi, my name is Tim Brain. Thank you for inviting me and for considering my application. I started coming to Nantucket when I was a kid in the 1950s, and came summers for several years. My wife and I bought a house in Sconset about 25 years ago, and recently we've become has become our primary residence. So, and we spend most of our time here. I'm interested in getting involved in island affairs, and a couple of years ago, I got very interested in particular in the coastal resiliency issues and sea level rise. I'm familiar with the work that Remain did. I'm familiar with the Coastal Resiliency Plan, and I've become a regular attendee of the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee meetings. And I'm interested in CONCOM because CONCOM is going to be in the middle of any decisions that are being made and any plans that are being made with regard to sea level rise. And those problems are going to keep coming at us more and more. I don't have any particular, I don't have any academic background like the other members of the commission do, but I have some experience with government in New York City. I started a nonprofit that worked with the Metropolitan Transit Authority, which is a huge bureaucracy. So I learned some important things. One, understand what the interests of all the stakeholders are. And two, be patient. It's really a difficult job. So I think I'm a pretty level-headed guy. I'm eager to help if I can. So thank you for considering me.
Thank you, Tim. Last, we have Jennifer Porter. Is she here or online? You don't see anything, do you? Okay.
I will note, though, that Joanna Roach is on, and I don't know if
Is the board okay if I go back?
want to go
Joanna?
back for her.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Okay, Joanna, do you want to talk about your application for Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee?
Maybe she doesn't.
Can you?
I mean, I can bring her in. Oh, there she goes.
There we go. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. And thanks for coming back to me. I'm sorry, I was just running a little bit late. Yes, I wanted to just say, I think, number one, how much I have thoroughly enjoyed being on the Coastal Resiliency Committee, how much I have learned from the colleagues that I sit on the committee with, how important I think this work is, and that I would very much like to stay on the committee and continue to participate. I think that I think I add some value in terms of the financial lens to the town and also just in terms of continuity. So I welcome and thank you for allowing me to reapply.
Thank you, Joanna. Okay, that's all for Conservation Commission. If Jennifer Porter comes on, let me know.
Okay.
Or Mike Mazzarelli. Okay, we'll move on to the Contract Review Subcommittee. There's one seat available, no applications, but I do believe Dorothy Hertz applied late and will come on later. Is that right?
That'll go into your summer round.
Yeah,
Yep.
summer round. Okay. Council for Human Services, 4 seats available, 3 applicants. We have Tara Restieri, Jennifer Porter, and Amanda Wright. Do you see, is Tara here? Online? Jennifer Porter, I think we just saw, is not here. Amanda Wright.
I think Amanda emailed today. I think she's going to try to come on next week.
Okay.
She had a conflict.
Okay, great. Council on Aging, 4 seats available and 5 applicants. That is wonderful to see. Kendra Lockley, Arlene O'Reilly, Robert Kuko. Somebody help me there.
He's going to have to say it.
Oh, thank you. Kucharvi, Allison Forest Green, and Laura Holden. Is Kendra here or online?
I don't see her.
Arlene O'Reilly.
I don't see her either.
Okay. Bob, you're up. Sorry that I butchered that your last name.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to address you. My name is Bob Kucharvi, and I have been a permanent resident on the island for 6 years, but have owned a place all the way out in Nantucket for 31 years. I have retired twice from careers in both business and academia, and currently I do a little strategic communications consulting. I work part-time for the Nantucket Historical Association as museum guide, and I'm the coordinator of a new initiative called NHA on the Road, which has been bringing historical associations programs during the quiet months to the Saltmarsh Center, as well as all the senior living centers. I became acquainted with the Council on Aging when I was asked to facilitate the planning meetings of the Year of the Senior, which included representatives of the Council on Elder Affairs and the Council on Aging. Unfortunately, the events were canceled because of COVID. I've been active since moving here permanently, have held or do hold positions in numerous organizations on the island, including the Nantucket Rotary Club, the Nantucket Conservation Association, and the Nantucket Advisory Board to the HDC. I think I bring a broad base of experience to the position, and my work that I've been doing through NHA on the Road has been very rewarding as we've gone into the senior centers and met with the seniors, and just to find out what they know about the history of the island and everything else. So I'd be happy for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Is Allison here? I don't see her on the. And Laura Holden?
She's online.
Okay. Laura, you're up next.
I'm asking her to unmute.
Go ahead, Laura, just unmute.
Okay.
There you go. We can hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Good evening. My name is Laura Holden, and I'm sorry for not being able to meet with you in person, but I'm with my almost 99-year-old mother here who's just been hospitalized, and I'm seeing firsthand the challenges of aging and the end-of-life process. I'm seeing the importance of society to meet these challenges with home care services and medical care. The impact of COVID hit all of us greatly, and some more than others. Seniors have especially been hit hard, especially with the lack of social interaction and contact in the almost 3 years. There's a need to get our senior community back into society in a slow and safe pace and build up from there. Having been on the island full-time for the last 16 years, I just recently retired, and so I feel I could better identify the needs of the elders. As a volunteer for Meals on Wheels for almost 3 years, I'm also concerned about the impact of the cost of food, which has increased 25%, and how it will affect the nutritional content of our elder meals. Our senior full-time population has grown substantially in the last several years, as well as our summer senior residents. There is a need for us to evaluate the quality of life we are offering here. It's a daunting task to give the care, the respect, and to address the needs of this particular demographic, and to do the best that we are capable of. I feel I'm up for this challenge. So I thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, I think we'll move on to Cultural Council. We have Justin Cern, Jordan Fleshett, and Sarah Ellis. I see that Sarah is here online. Is Justin or Jordana? Sorry, Jordana here?
Not that I saw.
Okay, we go to Sarah Ellis.
Sure.
If you're ready, Sarah.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I filled out my incumbent application and I assume you've all seen it. I just wanted to reiterate just how wonderful it's been to be on the council and how much I'm looking forward to continuing to plan our fall ceremony, which has been delayed by 3 years. And just how much I enjoy working with all the other members. And that's all I have, but thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, we'll go on to our last one, to the Finance Committee. We have Chris Galacki and Jill Veith. They're both incumbents.
Did not see either.
Yeah, I don't see them here or online. And we have one more application that'll come on later. Stephen Morey, incumbent, also applied, but that'll come later. Okay, any questions or comments from the board? I'll speak for the board to say thank you for everybody who came tonight to speak and everybody who applied. Just gives me kind of chills sometimes. Just, when I first came on this board, my first term, there was, if one person applied for Council on Aging or anything, we were so happy that somebody would apply just to fill the seats. And now we have this other problem, which is a good problem of, like 2 seats available and 4 people applying. And it's a great thing. I think it's come out of COVID as people are more engaged, and it's very exciting. Everybody's shaking their head here at home. If you can't see us, we're on the radio. Okay, we're going to move on. And everybody who's here speaking as an applicant, you can go. It's okay. We won't hold you to it. I'm giving you a little option. You can run away right now. Okay, moving on to tree removal denial. This appeal to the Board of Public Works, 10 York Street. We have 2 of these, 10 York Street and 117 Orange Street. And we'll start off with 10 York Street. I see somebody with their, can't tell who's got their hand up. Okay. Libby, did you want to give us any background at all on this? Just the kind of the...
I haven't really been handling this, but there's been a combination of muddledness, I'm just going to say, about this entire thing, because we don't do this very often. Yep. The Tree Advisory Committee met a few times. I guess I would perhaps look to the tree warden to give a bit of an overview of this, if that's okay, Dave.
Can I just make one note before Dave starts speaking? So I just wanted everybody to know, because I'm not sure if everybody saw the packet materials, but this is, I put appeal in quotes because there's really no statute outlined either in the town code or within the MGL that talks about appeals of the decision of the tree warden and the tree advisory committee to the select board. But in consultation with town council, he advised that we should go forward with the hearing and hear both sides of the property owners and their representatives, as well as the tree warden, who will explain the reason behind the denials. No abutter notification was required. It didn't need to be a public hearing in terms of advertisement and anything like that. And we do have Attorney Brian Riley from Town Council's office on to advise anybody if anybody has any questions. Dave Shampoo is here, as well as Ken Bogrand, our real estate specialist, who has apparently been working with the Tree Advisory Committee on this.
Okay, thank you, Erica.
Sure.
Yep.
What recourse, this is a legal question, or what recourse if a result that someone doesn't like is measured, what recourse is there?
I'm going to refer that question to Brian Riley, if I may.
Brian?
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm afraid I really couldn't hear that question.
What happens if we make a decision that someone doesn't like? What is their recourse?
Well, if, as Eric has said, I looked back at a couple of special acts where the tree warden was taken over by a tree committee in the 40s. And then when the Board of Public Works was established, that kind of took the tree committee duties in. So I think the short answer is there really isn't anything in those acts that talks about an appeal from what this board might do. There is a there is a statutory process called certiorari, which sort of creates an ability to go to superior court if you've got some sort of governmental decision that doesn't provide for an appeal. So I'd say there would be that.
And Brian, sorry, should the tree warden start this, or should the person appealing the decision?
I mean, I don't think it really matters. It might be best if the board hears from the tree warden, kind of explaining, what he and the tree advisory committee looked at and went into their decision, and whatever facts they found relevant. But it doesn't really matter. I'll leave that up to the board. Both sides should be able to explain why they have their view of it.
Thank you, Brian. We'll start with the tree warden. And then Ken, if you want to add anything after he's done, please do.
Good evening.
Right.
I think we go back to when this property came up for sale at 10 York Street. It first came to my attention when a couple that was interested in buying this particular property came to me and asked me, about the trees that were there. And I said, well, I'll find out. So I talked to Dale Gary, our town arborist, and he indicated, yes, those trees have been worked on by the town over a period, and they're town trees and should be protected as such. So I informed them, and I never heard back, but they certainly declined to bid on the property. Now, so this came up at the Tree Advisory Committee. I think our minutes will attest to that there was a discussion about it, and then we kind of lost track of the whole thing, but we did notice that one of the trees had been pruned without permission. And so, but we never did find out until the tree that was pruned was actually cut down, and then it became a real issue. So I think that's where this whole process started. Was we informed the owner that this was a town tree, and you really need permission to do what you did, and what you didn't. So that's the history.
Any questions? Go ahead.
The owner was informed after the tree was removed, the tree,
Correct.
Not after the pruning, but after the first tree was removed?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And does Dale keep a log of how long he works or when he works?
He does. And interestingly, about this tree, a couple of things have come to light since this whole thing has happened. Is Dale remembered that he had given Bartlett Tree Company permission to prune these trees back, I think it was before the property came up for sale. There was a street closure permit that was granted. Dale notified Bartlett that the property owner should be informed that these are town trees. And, you know, whether or not that was told to the owner, I have no idea. But that has been our main, you know, we've maintained, and that's the reason for the denial of the request, is we really believe that these are town trees. And another interesting thing about it is, I think the property was owned by Jose Reyes, the basket maker here. And I know his wife was quite interested in trees. The trees certainly date back to a time when the town was planting trees on town property, not town property, private property, because it was a better place to be planting trees. So it certainly fits the scenario.
So what makes a town tree? Is it the town plants it, or as soon as Dale Gary touches it, it becomes a town
yeah,
tree?
Yes, it certainly, if the town plants it, and this will come up in the next hearing that we're going to have, which was definitely a town planting project. We're not sure about these trees, whether they were or weren't. We do know that on this property, there's also a ginkgo, which is a very nice tree that Roger Geiger planted when he was here. So we know that was planted with the permission of the property owner at the time. That isn't in question, apparently in this. So you know, the town has taken over also, you know, pruning of private trees, you know, for various circumstances, and if it's worked on 3 times, it's considered a town tree.
Just to further answer your question relative
Sure.
to the definition of town.
Go ahead, Ken.
As indicated in the packet, in the minutes that are being pointed out that the tree one side of the roadside, I'm council advising that under section 132 of the town code, if any part of the root system is on town property, then it is a town tree. So in this particular instance, we have a situation where there is a root system that is on town property, which is a town tree. Secondly, we have a situation where this tree was pruned. So the first tree that was taken down without permission. It was a town tree. And so the fact is that, as indicated in the material presented to the opponents at the meeting, that because the town had worked on it and had records relative to that, there's no question there are 2 separate reasons why this should be a town tree and form the basis for the denial. One of the things that the tree committee is also looking at would be that there should be reimbursement to the town for the cost of the tree that the town tree was taken down should go into the fund that the town has to place for the trees. So it's an additional situation with respect to it, but it wasn't formally part of this appeal.
I mean, this whole thing with the root system just came to light from another situation, a hazardous tree in town on Quinn Street that the owner was reluctant to take the tree down, despite the fact that it's going to fall on somebody or whatever. You know, it's so that's where it was something that I wasn't aware of, and certainly and that was what I was alluding to before. Is we found certain things after the fact in this after the hearing.
Any questions for Ken or Dave before I go to Arthur Reed? Matt?
It was interesting. Brian Riley was talking about the 40s, and we've been doing this for a long time. and I'm making an assumption, sort of asking a question too. When you see the old pictures of the island, there were no trees, in the hinterlands, and there weren't very many downtown. And it seems like the town went on a, sort of a tree planting spree for quite a while.
Well,
and is that when this all started, or?
Well, I mean, I think that it really started in a great deal after the Great Fire, and it was started really because they wanted to have a kind of a barrier, so the fire, if it started, wouldn't jump across the street or to the neighbors, and the Coffin brothers were quite involved in that, and I mean they planted extensively, and that wasn't the only thing they planted. The coffin pines on Myacomet Avenue, but come about the 30s or 40s, the town engaged in an upgrade of infrastructure, and I always thought it was Dutch elm disease that really did our tree population in, but it was all this infrastructure work, and we're coming to that again, and it's I'm worried about what's going to happen to the trees in town.
Is the board okay if I go to property owner? Okay. So Arthur, would you like to speak first, or Jeff? Arthur, you had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'd definitely like to speak. By the way, I could not hear anything of what Ken Bogrand was saying at the microphone a few minutes ago. None of that was audible online. I don't know if there's something wrong with that microphone or what the problem is. But
yeah, I think they just came down and fixed
missed
it.
all of that.
Do you want us to
Okay.
have him repeat it? Would it be helpful?
We can do that. We can do that later. I'm sort of chomping at the bit at the present time about wanting to make our presentation. I represent 10 York Street LLC, the owner of the property in question, and its principal, Jeff Kashulik, who is on the call here with me. And when Mr. Kashulik was buying the property, was looking at the possibility of buying the property in 2020, he was being represented in connection with the purchase by attorney Richard Glidden. And Mr. Glidden at that time contacted the DPW office, which has jurisdiction, as we know, over the over trees. And as we know, the tree warden and town arborist work through the DPW. And Richard contacted the DPW to find out whether the trees in question were town trees. Now, these are the two catalpa trees that are on the property, one of which has been cut down, the other of which is still there. And there is a third tree, as Dave indicated, the ginkgo biloba, which is, we all agree, a significant tree and a tree that nobody wants any part of taking down. We're only dealing with the catalpa trees. In any event, Richard Glidden dropped off pictures of the DPW. The person out there with whom he spoke said that she would find out whether they were town trees and get back to him. And she called him back the next day and said, they're not town trees. And in reliance upon that, because it has a significant impact upon the ability to build a house on the property, the buyer, Mr. Kashulik, went forward and purchased the property. By the way, in addition to that, in addition to his contact with the DPW, Mr. Glidden also looked at the GIS map that was on the town website, which shows the location of town trees. And it showed specifically certain trees as being on York Street and not on the property in question. So on the basis of all of that, I have to say that Mr. Kashulik was certainly entitled to believe, based upon anything that was available to him from the town records and from his due diligence,
that these were not town trees and that they would not have any impact or bearing upon his ability to work on the property. So subsequently, after having purchased the property and not being aware of any issue of these being town trees, he did have some work done on one of the trees and then had it removed. And only after that did he hear from Dale Gary. Mr. Kashuk received a call from Dale to indicate that these were in fact town trees and not to be removed. And he also spoke with Dave Shampoo on that same day. And as indicated, there have been discussions and hearings before the Pre-Advisory Committee regarding this subject, which resulted in the request to remove the second catalpa tree being denied, and bringing us on, whether you call it an appeal or not, we're coming before the DPW, the Public Works Board, which the selectmen constitute, in order to ask you to make a decision on this point. As to the question of whether there is a further source of appeal on this, I would have said exactly what Mr. Riley said. This is a matter that there is no specific statutory appeal process that is specific to this matter, and on any matter where there is no other remedy at law regarding a governmental action, the remedy is a certiorari action in Superior Court. Not a place where any of us want to have to go, obviously, but that is the legal framework that we're operating within. Now, beyond that, the bylaw criteria with regard to town trees, and I have to say that I think that all of this could be a subject to be looked at in some detail in order to clarify and enable the public and property owners to understand more clearly what the rules are, and to enable them to be put on notice, rather than being led into a situation where they're basically walking into a trap. If they do their due diligence and there's no way of finding out that that they're running into a problem. I'm not suggesting that people like Dave or Dale, who I have the highest respect for both of them, would be interested in laying a trap for anybody. But the fact is that this is the effect of what has happened here. Now, as far as the definition of town tree is concerned, as Erica had it up on the board a few minutes ago, I have it in front of me here now, and any one of the following conditions make it a town tree. Well, first of all, one, the tree was purchased or its tree planting was paid for by the town. That's obviously a perfectly legitimate point. And the thing is that there's no record, there's no means by which anyone would know that the tree has been purchased by the town or its planting paid for, unless item E on this list, town trees shall be marked with a medallion, the presence of which shall be conclusive of the status of the tree as a town tree. Well, that is a means of providing notice to property owners, to people who might be dealing with the property, to the public at large, to anyone working on the tree, that it is in fact a town tree and therefore subject to town jurisdiction. And that introduces an element of fairness if there is a medallion. However, there is no medallion on this tree. So if the tree was purchased or its planting was paid for by the town, we have no proof of that, nor is there any indication given to Mr. Schulich or to anyone else who would be looking at a tree in this situation that it was a town tree. Secondly, it stands on or has its trunk partially on town-owned property. Well, the trunk of this tree is entirely within the lot. It stands on Mr. Kashulik's property. The tree was donated or otherwise conveyed to the town. Again, we have no notice of that. And D, the tree has been maintained more than once by town funds, equipment, or personnel during the last 20 years. with visits separated by more than 1 year. Mr. Glidden reached out to the former owner of the property regarding that issue after the question came up when Mr. Schulich was first notified of the issue. And that owner denied strenuously that there had been any work done by the town on the tree during the period of time that he had owned it, which was almost 20 years. And again, unless you have a situation where the trunk is partially on town property, or where there is a medallion on the tree, there is no means, there is no notice, there is nothing on record at the Registry of Deeds. There is nothing by way of any publication that is issued by the town or any town agency that would put any property owner on notice. And I think that that's frankly an abuse of governmental power and is arbitrary, capricious, and should be overturned. Again, I respect very much the work with regard to the trees in town that are done by Dave and by Dale, both of whom I've known for a long time and have the highest regard for. And I think that what needs to be done is that, first of all, in this case, the second catalpa tree, which we would like to remove, is not a tree of any great significance, and we think that we should be allowed to remove it. And furthermore, we think that this provides a good example and a good opportunity for the regulations set forth in Chapter 132, Section 2, to be upgraded, and for the lesson to be learned that there needs to be some registry by which people can be made readily aware of the existence and status of town trees, whether it be by the medallion. And again, I understand the point that a medallion can fall off, but that's a good means of giving notice. And if there is some, as I say, registry that is kept at the DPW that members of the public can have access to, that should put the whole issue to rest for once and for all. Jeff would like to come on, I know, and just corroborate the things that I've said. Richard was on the call earlier. I don't see him on right now, but the statements that I've made about what he did, I've discussed with him personally, and I can corroborate that that's exactly what he told me he did. Jeff?
Yes. Arthur, thank you. Jeff, you may go ahead. Let's try not to repeat everything. So we want to go back to Mr. Riley and the board, and then we can come back to you guys too. Go ahead, Jeff.
Jason, there will be no repeat. Arthur, thank you. The only matter that I would like to just address is Mr. Shampoo's comment slash Mr. Bogran regarding tree roots, on town property, make it a town tree. If that's the case, the tree roots on any and every tree extend out essentially at a minimum the exact width of the tree. Okay, and if that policy is now the accepted, if it overrides the 5 items that Arthur just mentioned and discussed, then every single tree lining every single street in the downtown Nantucket area and however far you want to take it out would then be a town tree, because every tree's roots end up in streets, and for them that are basically street lined. And in the past, I have reached out to the DPW / Dale. Dale would confirm this. On other trees, pre-COVID, and have been told, trees that were on North Liberty Street, for instance, maple trees, and they are not. They are not. Dale had told me they are not town trees. And these were trees that were equally as close as this catalpa tree on North Liberty Street. So anyways, I just wanted to make sure that was that was very clear. So thank you, and we'll see how this is interpreted.
Thank you, Jeff. We go to Brian. Mr. Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to add one thing which I didn't say earlier. As you've heard, there's no particular appeal process in the special acts that apply here. I think in terms of the board making a decision here, you all know well what the standard is when you hear an HDC appeal. That, of course, is much more formalized and set forth in those acts. But I think it's kind of analogous. You've heard the report from the tree warden and the tree committee on what they base their decision on, what their recommendation, and then you've heard from Mr. Reed and Mr. Koszulek. Obviously some facts are sort of contradictory, but that's where you sit in judgment, so to speak. So, but it seems to me that you're looking at more or less the same kind of standard. You decide which facts are stronger, or if what the tree warden has reported was sort of arbitrary or not supported, then you could decide to overturn that decision. Otherwise, much like the HDC, I think if that hasn't been shown, then you can accept what the tree warden's report is and decide that there is a town tree. So I just wanted to kind of throw that in there if you're wondering how you should look at this situation.
Thank you, Brian. Ken, do you have something?
Yes, just wanted to comment on one fact that was stated by Mr. Reed, and that was relative to the situation which he deemed important in terms of having gotten permission from the DPW. At the actual hearing, when Richard Glidden spoke about that, we asked him about that. He said that he did not remember who he had given the thing to and who he got permission from. And then we asked him whether or not he'd gotten anything in writing in terms of confirming from the DPW that that was a situation, and he did not have anything in writing. So I just wanted to correct those facts relative to what transpired at the hearing.
Thank you. Dave, you have anything to add?
Well, I took some notes. Of course, there was nothing in writing from the DPW, and also Richard had referenced the fact that they couldn't get a hold of Dale because he was on sick leave. I was able to get a hold of Dale on sick leave. It seems like, it's almost like the lowest hanging fruit here. It's hear what you want to hear and disregard the rest without going the route of finding out. I've been the tree warden for a long time. They certainly could have asked me. Never had a question about it.
Okay.
Jeff Koszulek knows I'm tree warden. He knows.
Okay.
The map they referenced, it says clearly on the map, not to be used as reference. It was an incomplete map that was started by the DPW. The person that was in charge of that left the employee, so nothing was ever completed on it. It's a very incomplete map. Medallions, certainly the medallions are a problem. They fall off. Dale and his crew have endeavored to get the medallions on all the trees. If you look around town trees now, you'll see the medallions clearly on the tree itself. So, we're trying. It's Gordon Folger was a commenter on our. He's a neighbor of this property and has witnessed during his ownership of the property the DPW working on the trees. and has strenuously asked to retain the trees. They really make a spot on that street. Without those, it's bare, and we're looking at another house.
Okay.
I suggest that Mr. Krashulik downsize the project, make a smaller house, go back to the drawing board.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to try to move this along and get us thinking about systems and how do we move forward. So I like Brian's. Let's use the HCC process as a basis, just to think through it. My quick comment, just to get us moving forward, is we're trying to put an HCC process on a non-system. It's nobody's fault. It's not the DPW's fault. It's not the tree advisory's fault. There's no system. There's nowhere you go online to figure out where is it online? Is it a town tree? There's really no system. It's like, can you get a hold of Dale? Can you get a hold of Dave? Not everybody knows how to do that. So it's a flawed system. So was the tree advisory's decision arbitrary and capricious with the best system that they were given, right? They're volunteers they're working with, not a system. So I guess I just want to get us started on how to make a decision, because we could talk about this for 2 hours and we have one more after this. We're policymakers, this falls in our laps, but I don't want to talk about this for another hour. So what would you guys like to do, or where to start? Or we can just make a motion.
Well, I mean, the two things that jump to my mind is that we do need a better process so that these can just be looked up. But it's also, should there be a process, throughout town, we see trees that eventually do come down for whatever reason and they get replaced. Is there a way to work with someone where they can kind of make restitution in moving a similar tree somewhere else onto the property, or something along those lines? I don't want it to be so punitive that it's kind of unreasonable. Those were some of the things I was thinking.
Thank you, Don.
And I've been involved with this a couple times over the years. One time there was one sort of at the bottom of the cliff that we said do not cut, and it got cut anyway. There was another one on Orange Street that they said do not move it. The people on Orange Street wanted to get rid of their yard and cut in a parking space, and there was a tree in the way, and lo and behold, that one did get cut down and got moved slightly somehow. So I think people have been sort of working around this for a while. I agree with Dawn that that the system needs to be better and we need to have a better way of doing it, but I'm not sure I agree that there was anything wrong here. I think the standard for the HCC is pretty high. You've got to have arbitrary and capricious. It's hard for us to overturn. We have to find something that we've done wrong, and I'm not sure within the system that we have now, I'm not sure we've done something wrong. I see plenty of things we could do better, that we should be striving to do better on. So that's kind of where I am right now.
Brooke?
So for me, there's two questions. There's the tree that was removed, and we're not really addressing that question. The thing that's before us is the decision to say the other tree cannot be removed, right? So it feels to me that that process, as flawed as it is, once it was declared that this could be a town tree, and there were meetings about it and discussions about it, and the definitions were clarified, and this tree, according to the records of the town, has been worked on and therefore qualifies as a town tree, that it feels to me like that's what we're looking at right now, is it meets the criteria, therefore it's a town tree. Now, the question about whether or not the owner knew the other one was a town tree when they removed it is another question altogether, for another day, in terms of should there be a punitive action with regard to that. That's another question. But I'm leaning right now toward it meets the criteria, And anything that happened before that upon acquisition of the property is sort of irrelevant once it was known that this was potentially a town tree and it was discussed and decided that's that. It's kind of where my head's at.
Thank you. Melissa, did you want to make a comment?
Sure. Thanks, Jason. It's really unfortunate that the process was not clear. So I think I agree with my fellow board members that there's a opportunity for improvement in this process. I do think that, once it got to the Tree Advisory Committee's attention, there was diligence paid and attention paid to it. It's unfortunate that Mr. Krashulik wasn't aware of the tree being on his property before he purchased it. In all honesty, I think if it was that important to know before making a decision to purchase the property, I might suggest that there was, getting the answer in writing rather than a phone call from an admin assistant at the DPW. I also think this, quote unquote, appeal process really should be better defined for us. I do agree with Dawn that in some instances, restitution could be a decent compromise when situations are unclear. But if we're really just being asked tonight to uphold whether the Tree Advisory Committee's decision was arbitrary or capricious, I can't see that it is. Thanks.
Thanks, Melissa. I don't think their decision was arbitrary and capricious, but it was based on a system, a non-system. There's not really a system there. So it's a little flawed. So the recommendation from the Town Advisory Committee is to keep the tree, so we can deny that. Can we go to Mary Longacre? She has her hand up.
Sure. I do want to point out in my communication with Brian Riley, we agreed that it was a flawed process, and the goal is to work to clarify that and clean up our bylaws.
This is Mary Longacre. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm speaking as a former Tree Advisory Committee member, and I certainly acknowledge that the process could be more helpful to homeowners. But I want to remind the board that the reason that we have this kind of a process is that somebody needs to protect the trees. Trees provide a public good. They are not solely on private property. They have benefits to the entire community. They have benefits to the environment, and they can't simply be replaced by an amount of money, even by another tree. Many of our trees are well over 100 years old. You can't fast forward that kind of growth and produce that kind of effect. I have to say, when I drive around town and I see some of the trees that were planted in the 90s, which is now 25 years ago, that I was on the Tree Advisory Committee and we selected those trees in those locations, I am so proud that we did that then with the foresight that those would be benefits to the public in the future. Obviously, I was not involved in the planting of the tree in question here. It's much older than that, I think. But I think it's wise to remember that the people who planted those trees were planting them for us in the future. And you can't just go cutting trees down and say, oh, we'll plant another one. That's not how it works. The trees that we have, are a signature part of our community. And when you look back in the 40s and so on, the trees probably were there. They were just a lot smaller. And we're benefiting today from the growth and the foresight that people had decades and even a century ago. The trees can't speak for themselves. That's why we have a committee to carefully evaluate which trees do provide a level of public benefit that warrants keeping them in place. And so I urge you to remember that as you deliberate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Any questions or comments from the board? Anybody else?
Jason, I'm sorry, it's Melissa.
Yep.
Just before we go, I guess, is the motion, and maybe this is a question to Brian, but is the motion whether to uphold the Tree Advisory Committee's decision or not? And then I guess my second follow-up question is, if we do choose to uphold that decision, then is Arthur's suggestion that the next level would be that this would go to in front of a judge? And if Mr. Kushiluk chose to do that, is that the next step? And is that what we're voting on?
Go ahead, Brian.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I'll address that. First, I think similar to the HTC process, you did have a decision from the tree warden, who essentially acts as an agent, for the Board of Public Works. So the tree warden made a decision on what the status of this tree was, and so I think that is what's before you is a motion either to affirm the tree warden's decision or to overturn it. And then, as I say, if it came to it, that's the way that the board's decision tonight that's about the only way it could actually be appealed, further, would be, in my opinion, a complaint in Superior Court.
Thank you, Brian. So we can, if we uphold the, I'm just going to throw some different options of trying to play this out. We uphold it, they take it down anyway, and they're fined $300, $400, right? So we don't have a lot of control. Or we uphold it, they go to Superior Court. I would say because there's not a major process or fine, they could take it down anyway, right? But they are here trying to talk this through and spending money and time. So I think they're going through the process. Any last comments or a motion?
I mean, I don't have a problem with upholding the decision because I think it was well thought out and makes sense, but that is my concern. Do we want to set up a process where it's better for someone to just go cut the trees down and never ask and then just get a fine that's $300, which is nothing compared to the replacement cost of one of those trees? So that's just what I'm throwing out there in terms of policy and process. Not sure what the answer is.
Policy on the fly.
And you know how much I love that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, there's no system in place and everybody's doing the best they can with what they have in front of them.
Jason, I'm sorry, it's Melissa.
Yep.
I think Don, you raises a good point, but I'm not entirely sure that that's, if that's something that we want to talk about as Erica talked about, like the process being improved. I think that's going to be part of that. And so I think that is a separate policy conversation. So I think the decision is in front of us tonight about, in this particular instance, and given our current policy and our current purview, what can we decide to do? And I think, that I like what you're saying, but I think it's a conversation for another night. And if it's okay, I would make a motion to affirm the town warden's, the tree warden's decision.
Is there a second?
I mean, I'll second the motion because I think with what we have, it's the right process. However, most people I know would probably be out there with a chainsaw tonight at midnight.
Right.
This might, I guess,
Yep.
I said, this might be a Brian Riley question, but let's assume someone took a chainsaw to I can't imagine it's only $300 of damage. If someone took a chainsaw to, a bunch of trees on Main Street because they don't like trees, I'm sure that that we as a town could challenge that and value those and get more than $300 per tree. And so, I think we should, and I guess, is that a question to Brian? If someone does something, is it only $300 or does the town have some leverage and some recourse?
I mean, typically where you're talking about a town bylaw, $300 violation is kind of the cap. There I mean, there probably would be another way to go about it, you know, trying to get real damages on something like that. But then I'd say the burden would probably be on the town to try to go to court and do something along those lines in terms of some sort of enforceable penalty.
Eric, go ahead.
I just want to clarify that section 132-8 of the town code, violations and penalties and enforcement, does state that any violation of this chapter, meaning if somebody cuts down a town tree, is punishable by a fine of $300 to be enforced by the tree warden.
Thank you. Brooke?
So regardless, we're limited by that, right? That's the reality. Even if we set up a new framework and we set up a new system and it's more transparent, that restriction is still there. The reason to set up a different framework is to have transparency and understanding of the identification of, so people know, right? This situation is unfortunate and it's confusion. To me, it does not change the facts, nor does it change the fact that we don't have a lot of recourse if someone decides to take a town tree down without permission. So that's not a reason to not do, in my mind, to not support, that's a double negative, the decision that was made. And we're going to have to look at the consequences of this system not having been in place and do our best to create a better system going forward, with the understanding that if we can't have more than a $300 fee, we're going to have to deal with the risk that someone will just take a tree down even when we tell them not to.
Can I make a comment?
No, the motion's already been on there. I'm trying to move this forward. We'll probably be talking to you here in a second. Are we ready to vote?
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got to do roll call. My bad. Melissa?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Brooke?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Jason, aye. Okay, so that passes. The tree advisory's recommendation is upheld. We're going to move on to the next one, which is 117 Orange Street. And would you like to start us off on that one, Dave?
Yes. Back in the Bud Clute era, there was a number of honey locusts that were planted, quite notably in front of the old Island home. All those honey locusts were planted at that time.
Hey, Dave,
Yes.
can you just tell people who Bud Clute was? Because I don't
Bud
think a
Clute-
lot of people know.
Okay, Bud Clute was the DPW superintendent for many years, was a selectman here for a long time, friend of mine, and always liked to talk trees with Bud. And so anyway, he was in charge of the tree planting program at the DPW at the time. It was back, I think it was back in the late 50s when those trees were planted. Gold Star Drive, all along Orange Street. Joan Fisher, according to Dale Gary, still has a permission slips, their permission slip from granting an easement to plant the tree on their property on Orange Street, the corner of West Creek. The tree in question at 117 was certainly one of them. And I've talked to John McLaughlin, who was the previous owner of the property before it was the video store. And he said he couldn't remember, it was so long ago, but he did remember giving Bud permission. He couldn't remember if he got anything in writing, but there's certainly indications that that was the case. And I don't think there's been any question that by the owner, the current owner of the property, that it is a town tree. He just doesn't like it. He's saying it's a detriment to his building, but it really makes a statement on what's really doesn't have many trees in that stretch of Orange Street. So it's something that I think it's a no-brainer. I mean, it's This should not be allowed, it's pure and simple.
Thank you, Dave.
It's a very healthy tree. He contends, based on our hearing, he contends that it's diseased or it's dying, and it's not the case. It's
Okay.
absolutely healthy.
Thank you, Dave. Ken?
You know, there's 21 other issue other than what was discussed before, relative to this particular application. And that was that the town arborist-
Jason, I'm sorry, it's Melissa. We can't hear Ken again.
Can
I'm
you
not
come over
sure.
and this mic?
Thank you.
Thank you. There was just one other issue that was other than what was discussed before. And in this situation, the town arborist has assessed that the tree poses no public safety issue, is healthy, and those are two of the really important considerations that are considered by the Tree Advisory Committee. And finally, it's the only one in this immediate area and is absolutely paramount to the area's aesthetic. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. We go to Isaiah Truman. He's here online. Would you like to speak?
Yes, please. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, go ahead.
So thank you so much for taking the time to hear from me tonight. This is obviously not the biggest matter in the world, considering all the other stuff that's going on. It's a lot more important. And I don't want to drag this out, being that you just spent probably, half an hour or more on the last go around. And it's a very similar situation. I do not agree with a lot of the things that were just said. And I would like to just take a minute and share my view. But before I do that, I'd like to thank you for acknowledging that this process is extremely unclear on just about every metric that is set forth by the town in their own bylaws. And as a taxpayer, it's incredibly stressful and disconcerting when you can't make clear decisions. Information is not transparent and generally unavailable. I personally love trees. I grew up in Vermont in the woods with a home building family, Shaker furniture makers. I know a lot about trees. I've been involved with them my whole life. And I'd like nothing more than to plant some very new, beautiful trees that are a lot less hazardous to the building, the people inside it, and that are more appropriately located on the property itself. For the benefit of the community and the beautification of the Orange Street corridor. Very few people have invested more than I have in beautifying and improving a historic building in the Orange Street neighborhood that we're in recently. For the last 20 years, 117 Orange Street has been mostly a rundown and dilapidated site with dead and overcrowded landscaping. And the building dates back 150 years before the tree ever existed. I personally dispute the town's claim to ownership of the tree, and I request that I be allowed to remove my tree from my property for the following reasons. First of all, it's leaning directly over the building, which is occupied 24/7, often by youth in the community. If the tree was to fall in the building, it could be catastrophic. It's over 40 years old, it's aging, it's top heavy, and it's exposed to direct harbor winds, especially with the HDC removing all the vegetation across the street, and it has no protective trees around it for support. I never did say it was diseased, but healthy trees fall all the time. A tree does not need to be diseased for it to come down in a big storm. The root system in this particular tree is located in a designated floodplain space on the harbor. Sea levels are rising, and this particular location floods all the time, massively, like Lake Orange Street. I'm sure you've all seen it driving by. So with all due respect, and I do very much appreciate the work that the tree committee is doing. Like I said, I respect everybody involved in this process. It's unfortunate that it's been so unclear. I feel like I'm the bad guy, and I'm really just trying to understand my rights and exercise my rights as a property owner and taxpayer. But nobody has a crystal ball. With all due respect to Dale and everybody on the committee, nobody can tell exactly what tree is and isn't going to fall, whether it's healthy or not. And if somebody did, I mean, there are trees falling all the time on this island in the winter, in town trees. If somebody is that good at determining which tree was and wasn't going to fall, they would cut them down before they fall, but it's just not possible. You can't tell me that tree is not going to fall in the building. You just can't say that. And in my experience, human lives are frankly more valuable or more important than trees. And so I personally am very frustrated because I see a huge catastrophic liability that could easily be addressed. And instead of having any kind of transparency, I'm kind of feeling like I've been backed into a corner, like my opinions and my rights don't really matter. I'm kind of ganged up on by like 22 people who don't seem to be respecting their very own stated protocols. And my question is, what is the protocol? Are we just waiting for the tree to fall on a building and then to react? Or is there some actual process here? Because my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, someone, but at no time ever in the history of this tree committee's existence has there ever been one single approval for the removal of a dangerous tree at a resident taxpayer's request. Never. So what's the point of even having a meeting if it's already a foregone conclusion? Not to mention the fine's only $300. So yes, I am here in good faith. I've gone through every step of the process. I don't even know what the process really is, to be honest. But I can tell you that I have some definite questions about my legal rights. I'm not a lawyer. I don't have big lawyers representing me here. I'm not taking anybody to court. But I would like a fair shake here at recognizing that what is going on in the town is essentially an abuse of power, because black and white, when I read what has been written, I just don't understand. And so I'm sorry, I'll try and keep it brief, but section 132-2, town trees shall be marked with a medallion, the presence of which shall be conclusive of the status of the tree as a town tree. So is there any legitimate reason why this tree was not marked conclusively with the medallion? I don't ever remember seeing a medallion on this tree for 20 years since it was Orange Street video, and there's definitely not one there today. So, I mean, full stop. I don't understand what the problem is. Apparently, they went out and put a medallion on 2 days before our hearing as if that was appropriate or a resolution of the issue. And the whole thing about it, oh, it blows off in a storm. I mean, honestly, that sounds like a town issue, not a taxpayer issue. You put a screw in it, do what you need to do. But to say, oh, it blew off, sorry, your rights don't count, sorry, we messed up, is to me unacceptable. So section 132-7, planting and maintenance policy. It shall be the policy of the town of Nantucket that not to plant any tree on land not owned by the town, or to expend any funds or other efforts for maintenance of any tree which is not previously determined to be a town tree, except by written permission of the owner of the land on which the tree is or will be situated. So go back 50 years when supposedly John McLaughlin supposedly thinks he remembers that maybe he might have given permission, but the bottom line is, where is the document? The town is obligated to provide a written permission from the owner at the time, granting permission to plant this tree, and I haven't seen anything. So regardless if it was part of a mission or not, my rights as a taxpayer are being violated because I went through everything Jeff had to do. I went to the town, through all the records before I bought it. I looked on the map. It's not on the map. There's nothing, no medallion on the tree. There's no records showing anything in the town hall. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's not okay. I'm playing by the rules. I feel that the tree committee ought to be held to the same standard. If you don't do your job, how come it is still my liability? And so if the town's claim is that it was planted that long ago, I'd just like to see the documentation. I've asked multiple times. I've never seen anything. At the very least, if you're going to say to me that you're going to essentially claim my property in what I would call an unlawful manner, and then without fulfilling your own stated obligations, refuse to allow me to prevent a very potentially hazardous catastrophe from occurring, then if the tree, and when the tree does fall on the building with somebody's kid in it, the town at the very least should take full ownership for their own decisions and the insurance risk associated with it. But I'm being told that that's not the case. It's not my tree, even though there isn't a legitimate claim to it. I can't take it down, even though the fine is $300. And if it does fall in the building, then it's 100% my liability and the town takes no responsibility whatsoever. And I'm asking you, does that sound fair? I mean, with all due respect, it's borderline un-American in my experience. And I'm very upset. So if you think I'm reaching too far, I'm kind of trying to manifest some imaginary situation. I do have an image here of an enormous tree fallen on the Nantucket Health Club this past winter, which destroyed half the side of the building. And they're just incredibly lucky nobody was hurt and the damage wasn't worse. Their tree fell from across the parking lot. This tree is directly over the building. So without saying too much more, taking up too much of your time, I'd just like to thank you again for at least representing the community members and taxpayers' perspective here a little bit as well, because it seems like people's rights are getting lost in the shuffle. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, any thoughts? Dawn?
I mean, only thing was that maybe posing that question to Brian about the liability. If we force someone to keep a tree and the town doesn't maintain it to a standard, that it doesn't fall, what happens?
Could you hear that, Brian? I'm sorry. Could you hear that, Brian?
I did. I mean, I don't want to speculate too much, but what I was going to add, and I'll try to come around to what Don just asked, is there is in the general laws, there's a definition for public shade trees, which is what under the statutes, that's what the tree warden is expected to have jurisdiction over, which is trees that are within the boundary of a public way, which is pretty much the same kind of situation that we have here. And even though it may be on someone's, private property owner's lot, the town and the tree warden are the ones who decide what to do with it. So it's not just a Nantucket bylaw issue. That's the way the system is set up. So if the town claims something as a public shade tree, it's on the tree warden basically to keep an eye on it. If it looks like it's getting diseased or posing a hazard to whether it's the people on the public way or the property owner, then there's a process to hold a hearing if necessary and take the thing down.
Has that ever happened? Has that ever happened?
I have no idea. In Nantucket? No idea.
It has never happened, ever.
Isaiah, let's talk through me. We'll do it one at a time.
Excuse me.
If you mean in general, can a tree warden take down a tree that, that's on it meets the definition of a public shade tree that is dying and the town takes it down? Sure, that happens all the time. I don't know about Nantucket.
I could answer it. There was a tree outside of our house back in the sort of 70s, and it was a huge tree. And during hurricanes, it would sway side to side, and it was ripping up the bricks, and it was ripping up the foundation. And the town came and took it out. So it has happened. It does, and I'm sure Dave can tell us of other instances where it is a true problem. It is truly dangerous and truly causing harm, and it's been taken out, and some have been taken out and replaced. So I think that's
okay. Brian, could you get to Don's question of what happens?
Yes. So, sort of speaking hypothetically here, let's say a tree starts really looking bad and big branches are falling off, and the property owner or the people who live on the street go to the town and say, this tree is going to cause a problem. Maybe it's time for it to come down. And the town is aware of that and ignores the situation, and then it falls over and causes damage. I could certainly see a town facing damage under those circumstances. In general, if a tree looks fine and then falls over under Massachusetts law, it's it's typically not the responsibility of the property owner that the tree stands on. It depends on the facts.
Okay, thank you. Melissa?
Hi, Jason. Thanks. I'm inclined that this situation is not incredibly different. The tree doesn't pose a threat right now. If it does, there's room for opportunity and conversation. If the tree has been deemed safe, unfortunately, natural events that occur, like huge windstorms where trees fall, are outside of anybody's control. But if both the tree advisory committee and the tree warden believe that the tree is healthy and poses no threat and is on town property, I think we have no choice but to affirm the tree wardens uphold their decision. So I'd like to make that motion to affirm the decision.
Is there a second for discussion?
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? Are we in the same place we were last time? Don't like the system, but we are where we are. Okay, we'll go start with you, Melissa.
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Brooke?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Jason, no. So that passes 4-1. Thank you, everyone, for all the time you put into it. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Ken. Thank you. Thank you, Zaya. Thank you.
Before we leave trees,
Jeff.
can we, on a future meeting, can we have a sort of a rundown of what we're going to do and who's going to do it and when we're going to do it and how we're going to improve this, sort of with a blueprint, as opposed to, let's talk about it next time we have an issue.
Yeah, it's going to take a little bit of time just to work with town council on looking at the different bylaws and seeing what needs to be updated and changed and everything like that, but sure.
Yeah, I think there's a public part of this, but I think this is a really good public-private, whether it's nonprofits on the island coming together and funding a system, interns like really trying to figure out how to get all this online, and then we come up with a system with bylaws. But then how do we put it out there to the public? Every single town tree on the island should be accessible.
Right. And I might add that there's got to be better communication between departments. There's so many trees at risk because of development here that, nobody's paying attention. Even when it comes to HDC, you're not seeing a significant thing on the property. And, 10 York Street has been denied, but they still have a building permit. And what do we do to protect the tree that's there? It's a problem. We can say, and this is why I was alluding to the fact that they've got to downsize this, because, that house as designed comes right up to that tree. That could be all pushed back. They seem to have, been able to remove the tree okay without any further ado. But we still are faced with the fact that this is a constructible piece of property.
Yep. Well, more work on this.
And there has to be some remediation by the building department to make sure that the tree is protected in the process.
Thank you, Dave. We have to move on.
Okay,
Yeah,
but I just wanted to make that point.
No, and I would like the committee and the town staff and other nonprofits to work on that and come back with, these are things we need to do. Here's who's going to do them. Here's how we're going to do them, and get them done. Because I think so that we aren't back here.
Yeah, we've been talking about this at pre-committee for a long time.
Yeah, so thank you.
So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to Memorial Day weekend update. Libby?
Sure. There were a couple of things ahead of that. I'm going to go to Memorial Day first.
Oh, sorry, did I? Oh, I'm sorry. Wow, I moved past a lot of stuff.
And of course,
I was trying to fly through this meeting.
Nice try, but I can make it quick. I think I can go quickly here.
Yeah.
So the first item under the town manager's report is a request for a public hearing to make Macy Road one-way eastbound. So there is some information in your packet on this, and just in a nutshell, as a result of some improvements that we're trying to make out near the Mattocket Beach parking lot due to severe erosion that has occurred there, rendering the parking lot basically not really very usable. We've established some angled parking along Macy Road within the town right-of-way. And in order to reduce the impact of vehicle use in that parking area, we think it would be a good idea to make the Macy Road one-way eastbound so that the traffic can be directed in one way and not, sort of haphazardly all over the place and causing potential damage to the parking area, which is a fragile area. So what we'd like you to do is consider scheduling, instructing us to schedule a public hearing, because that was what we typically would do to make a road going from two-way to one-way.
And as part of that process, the abutters will be notified?
If we decide to notify them.
Yeah.
I mean, we sometimes do, we sometimes don't. But if that's our process, yes.
Okay, how's everybody?
Make a motion.
Second.
All those in favor? Melissa?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Brooke?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Jason, aye. Thank you.
We have two traffic safety work group recommendations. I think they're pretty self-explanatory. They're in the packet. One is to install a new accessible parking space at 17 Washington Street. That's, I believe, coming from the Commission on Disability. The other is a resident request for a space near Sunset Hill at the rear entrance of 35 Westchester, and that would be for an individual with a need.
I would make a motion that we approve both.
I'll second that.
Okay, just one question for Art. Is it, there's already one accessible parking space there, so we're having two right next to each other at 17 Washington?
Was that for me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I believe that we were going to add not one right next to the other one, but to have them separated so that there'd be one in front of the Legion and then one back in front of the closer to the handlebar.
By the Artists Association, their gallery right there.
Right. And not to have stacked.
So this green area here, that would still just be regular parking in between the two spaces.
I'm just curious, how did this come about?
The American Legion
They asked. Yeah.
requested the additional space because I think they have a lot of elderly members. And before it went to traffic safety, I provided it to the Commission on Disability, who said that they were in favor. And actually, Mickey Rowland, the chair of the Commission on Disability, was the one who proposed this other location separate from the existing one. And a representative from the Legion was on the meeting and spoke in favor of that location.
Okay. Great. Any other comments? Thoughts? All those in favor, Melissa?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Jason, aye.
May I
Both-
say one thing?
Both
Sorry.
of those pass.
Curtis Barnes sent in a letter to me, I think today, just saying specifically the one on Sunset Hill Lane, he'd like it to have a, no pun intended, sunset date when the use is no longer needed. And I explained to him that the goal is to periodically review the approved accessible locations, and when they are no longer in use, to review those and potentially revert them back to regular parking.
Can we make that in the letter that we send to the people that requested it? Can we request that they they contact us when it's no longer in use? And put the sort of, so it's not our burden to keep asking, can we turn the burden onto the people requesting it to tell us it's no longer in use?
I have a feeling the neighbors around there will know, and they'll alert us, notify us.
Right, but I'm just thinking, if you have a letter saying you've been given the, we're installing this and we're, thank you very much, but please tell us when you're not using it.
If you sell
It
the,
can't hurt to ask.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
that's
should
fine.
just ask.
Okay.
Yeah.
It probably won't, who knows?
Is that done? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, Memorial Day weekend. I'm not really sure what department heads we have on here, but I think in summary, and we can go to them, it was pretty quiet overall for town activities. The report from the police department is there were about half a dozen noise complaints, not necessarily large party related. There were no establishment complaints. There were some long lines, but they were pretty well managed, evidently. There was one unrelated arrest unrelated to any Memorial Day events. And overall, they felt that it went well. Janet and I spoke this morning, Janet, about activity at the Visitor Services Building, and she may have a quick report on that. And who?
Chief Murphy's on also.
Okay, and we can hear from the fire chief. Janet?
Yeah, we were down 20% from 2019, but up 50% from last year in visitor services. We had 2 tour vans running this weekend. The Cisco van ran, and it shut down for a couple hours on Saturday because of the line at the brewery. And the shipwreck shuttle is running. We're open 7 days a week, but it's not up to 2019 levels yet. And I'm just going to say to you, this is my last night as the Director of Culture and Tourism, and you're going to have a great new Director of Culture and Tourism in Chantal Bloss.
Thank you, Janet.
Thank you, Janet. I should have said that as an intro. Thank you but Janet's not leaving. So it's not goodbye. It's just moving into a different position for now. But thank you so much, Janet.
You're
Chief
welcome.
Murphy?
Thank you, Janet. Our weekend was busy. We averaged about 10 calls a day from Thursday through Monday. There was 54 calls total, of which you could attribute about a half dozen to the festivities of the weekend. So the firefighters were busy, but not unattainable. They did a good job handling everything. As for bar checks, Fire Prevention Officer Townsend was out during the weekend doing several, correcting small issues throughout, and everything was in a safe condition.
Chief, how does this compare to a busy weekend in August? Just so we can have a baseline of the amount of calls you have in a 2 or 3 day period.
Probably, a busy day in August is probably 24 calls. So, one an hour is something that is not uncommon through a busy summertime. Back to 2019, this was right on par with that if you go back to pre-pandemic for our calls for Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, thank you. Matt?
Yeah, I would say, I would say what's happening, the COVID refugees, the people who are working from home are not here like they were the last couple of years during the weekdays. And so the weekdays are kind of back to 2018, 2019, and the weekends and the busier times are busier. Traditionally, depending on the weather, traditionally it seems to be about double. Like if you what happens around this weekend is kind of an indicator so for a lot of businesses they'll be they can not every business, but a lot of them are almost double when you look at August or July 4th or those type of times. So I think my sense is it'll build, if it is like it was in those years, it'll start to build when people get out of school now, and they're not all here now, but it'll build middle of June right up to the 4th, and the 4th will be very busy, if I had to guess.
I think that was it for the departmental reports.
Okay, thank you.
The monthly town management report is in your packet. We've tried to update our format a little bit, and I won't take you through every single thing, but we have some highlighted activities. We recently had a problem-focused cabinet retreat, and our topics were staffing, retention, and housing, and we're working through the issues that came up at that meeting and some potential actions to be taken. After that, we've got 2022 annual town meeting and annual town election follow-up underway. I think I've mentioned before, we've established a summer issues team, and they are going to be meeting regularly throughout the summer. We had a meeting last week. We had a preseason beach meeting a couple weeks ago. Actually, that's supposed to say April 24th, I think. And some other highlighted projects, plans, reports, and studies. The Coastal Resilience Plan is actively being followed up on. We're trying to get at the potential for a climate action plan and a sustainability framework, bringing back what we had developed previously in 2019, early 2020 from a group we hired called KLA. I think they gave a presentation to you all. So we're trying to bring some kind of a framework back for operationalizing sustainability within town government. The strategic plan remains ongoing, and we are trying to get at working on an update for you all. As you know, there's been a bit of staff outages recently, so we're a bit behind on a few things. Still waiting on Nantucket Water Quality Improvement Plan, but I think I may have mentioned previously that I think our outlook on this is to shift away from sewering Nantucket at this point and sewering other areas, which may be a bit more pressing. Facilities master plan still being worked on. Baxter Road long-term planning. This is very active. We actually have an abutter meeting tomorrow to review the plan, and internally, we probably will, after that, get ourselves prepared and bring you all an update sometime maybe in later June or July. PFAS is ongoing. Lots of meetings. Always there's lots of meetings, and June is no exception. Some staffing and personnel management related things. We have a number of positions that we now need to prepare for job descriptions, prepare bargaining if needed, and other things that we have to set up for new positions that were approved in our upcoming budget. Classification and comp study is still underway, along with some other things. Collective bargaining negotiations are just about complete, if not complete. Lots of projects and initiatives going on with staffing related to retention, housing, all of that. Hiring, we have a search underway for fire chief. Our collector is retiring in June, and we have somebody on board that's undergoing some training. We are going to be looking for a town accountant, and we may be looking at combining that position in some manner with the assistant finance director position or some other minor restructuring in that department. And as was mentioned, we have hired our new culture and tourism director, Chantal Blois-Murphy, who starts on Monday, and we are very excited about that. There is still some COVID impacts that we are working on. And one of those has to do with, trying to get projects back online. We have a serious lack of project management bandwidth in the town right at the moment. And we're looking at, work setups and whether or not there can be more remote work opportunities given the housing situation, things of that nature. A number of projects are underway, but we have a lot of projects on the drawing board that either haven't even started or have stalled because of the lack of project management, being able to take this stuff on. But there are some active things, including the Nova Deer Fieldhouse construction is underway. Parks Master Plan is very much active, and that actually has some associated other plans and activities going on with respect to the potential for a DPW facility at the airport Delta property in that general vicinity, playing field review and other things that are contained in the Parks Master Plan, and concession review. We have hired Weston and Sampson not only for the Parks Master Plan, but also do the concession review, and there were going to be probably a number of fiscal 2024 capital projects that come out of that. Summer prep is obviously very much underway. DEI strategic plan, you are going to get an update from our DEI director. He and I met today about it sometime this month. I forget exactly the date we landed on. The shooting range RFP evaluation is underway. That will be coming before you shortly. We are doing a few office moves coming up. We are moving housing and real estate back over to the 3 East Chestnut building, which we had actually hoped to demolish a couple of years ago, but now we are going to have to resurrect its use because there's simply no space for people, and we need to make room in the town building for other staffing needs. We're working on plastics, single-use plastics ban outreach. We did we called it the litter letter, went out to restaurants. Hopefully, Matt, you got it at the end before Memorial Day. And I didn't get downtown early in the morning, every single morning of the weekend, but I did get down Sunday morning and it looked pretty good to me. I don't know if other people were down there, but 7:30-ish, I think it looked pretty good. And a number of other regulatory issues are underway as well. And that's about it.
Thank you, Libby. If you want, we can move right to committee reports. That way, Melissa and Don, you don't have to wait and come back. You just take off. Do you have any committee reports from you two? Or any other comments?
I don't today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Melissa?
I don't have any. Thank you, Jason.
Okay, great. All right, we'll move on to.
Do we want to do committee reports while everyone's here?
Yeah, it's not yet.
Okay. Yeah, do you have any?
Sure.
It's not a committee report, but I did have a request to announce that Gay Pride activities are scheduled this coming weekend, and for people to check social media for the specifics of the event. There's stuff for adults, for youth, film screenings and discussions, parades, lots of great activities scheduled. So,
thank you, Matt.
Yeah, and I should have done this last week. I didn't do it last week. The Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee is asking for letters of support for the Coastal Zone Management Grant application. This application is for the Downtown Neighborhood Flood Barrier Phase 1 project. Downtown Neighborhood Flood Feasibility Study is basically what it will be. We would like this, they would like a letter from the select board, and Vince has sent a letter to Erica. I can read it. It's short if we want to vote it tonight, or we can put it on next week. It probably came in like right before tonight, so it was late, but I'll read it real quick. It's to the Mass Office of Coastal Zone Management from the Select Board regarding letter of support. We, the Nantucket Select Board, endorse the Coastal Resiliency Plan in January 2022 after much public engagement and feedback and discussion to understand the needs of the community in light of the increased risk to the downtown area from sea level rise as well as storms. This is a letter of support for the Downtown Neighborhood Flood Barrier Feasibility Study Project, and we encourage the Mass Office of Coastal Zone Management fund this grant application. This grant application aligns with the overall goal of the Coastal Resiliency Plan, came directly from the CRP recommendation 2.6 downtown neighborhood, blah, blah, blah. In turn, this will also contribute to CRP Project 2.2 downtown neighborhood flood barrier later project phases. Thank you for your consideration, Select Board, or Jason as chair for the Select Board. And there's a typo, he has you as Jason Bridge on behalf of us, so that would have to be adjusted if we did it.
Sounds good to me. Yeah. Do you want a motion, or do you just want
That's
consensus?
great, if we need it, or consensus.
Motion.
Either way.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All those in favor, Melissa?
Aye.
Dawn?
Aye.
Brooke?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Jason, aye.
And the select board is sending a letter, but the other ones that will help would come from sort of nonprofits, anyone involved with this, the chamber, the downtown business partnership, sort of any of those entities. And so hopefully we'll, I think what we're going to try to do is get an email chain out and try to give people a form letter or some bullet points so that they can put these letters in place too. This is a really crucial project, and the sooner we start it, it's going to take a while, but the sooner we start it, the better we'll all be. So.
Thank you, Matt. Okay.
I have to recuse from the short-term rental discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Dawn.
Good night.
So do I. Thank you. I'll be leaving.
Thanks, Melissa. Good night. Okay, short-term rental pre-work group framework update. So I'll start off the update, and Brooke's going to jump right in. She was there. I'm sure everybody watched it or rewatched it. So we had a draft, and we opened it up to the six, the two people from each board, the designees, and had a pretty good conversation and tweaked, I would say, a significant amount. The major tweaks and changes that I wrote down, and Brooke, you can stop me or add to it. Sure, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. So before I even go into that, next week, this will be on the agenda, and probably the week after that, it'll probably be on the agenda, so we can continue to talk about it. The board did not see this yet or get sent it in time for this, and it wasn't in our packet, so we don't have to dig in too much. But late June, I believe, I don't have the date in my head, but late June is the next meeting of the 6th. June 28th? Yeah, I believe it's a Tuesday, right? So we have some time. So each board, the Finance Committee and Planning Board and Select Board have time to review it. And then if we have any changes or suggestions, then we bring it back to that meeting. I had made a suggestion during that meeting to take the Select Board off and take NARAB off, mainly for to be able to create, not only have one at large, but to have 3 at large. I thought that was important. And like I said that night, I sacrificed the Select Board because we're the policymakers. I can see the advantage of us being there, but if we can set the mission and set the tone, and to bookend it and then try to guide it as much as we can, and at the end implement it, then I think that's a good position for us. But I really like the 3 at large. The other thing that was changed was the 5 people who will be deciding all the appointees will be these 3 Select Board members, Brooke, Matt, and Jason, and then Dave and Denise. So they were going to decide if they were going to, what we did add was to all the nominees. So if housing or the non-voting taxpayer, whoever they nominate, we have the last say of 5 versus them just nominating and it goes in. So we have a little bit of control. That was added. I thought that was a smart change. Because so all 5 of us have to agree on everybody. And let's see. And then the last was we have to work on the mission and the goals and not get too granular, but also provide guidance. What did I miss, Brooke, and some changes?
So the other thing about the nomination of work group members is that the groups that has a designated seat, or would appoint 2 people. One would serve as the primary representative and the other is the alternate in the event that the primary was unable to serve. And so it's really about having someone who's up to speed in case something happens and we don't lose the representation of that constituency. And I think what's really important to communicate is that there are many, many perspectives in the community on this issue, many individuals, personal interest, overarching interests of the community, et cetera. We can't create a work group that has someone representing every perspective. And so what's really important is to try to bring the people who have had active positions on this to the table to ensure that they're participating in the process, as well as through the at-large seats, making sure that a broad variety of other perspectives are also represented in the conversation, perhaps people who have an interest but haven't been as vocal in the discussions or debates in the community so far. So I think increasing the number of at-large seats and having a group determine who will take those seats is critical to the community feeling well represented in the process. And then making sure we have, and I'll repeat this, I'm going to say it every time we talk about this, really proactive community engagement process so that people who are not on the committee have the opportunity to present their perspectives to the work group for consideration.
Matt, you have a comment?
Yeah, I'll comment in a couple of questions. I think the public part of it is, I think one of the questions I get is, how are people going to be included? One of the letters we've got is, yeah, we can, we haven't been able to give public comment, or sometimes we are, but it's just ignored. So, so I think there's that feeling out there. I think we have to make sure that it's inclusive and that we find a way to, to take that information in and really, and have a committee that will actually look at it, So that was one. And a couple of the other letters we had recently was someone said, we have the non-voting taxpayer. What about the year-rounder? And I'm sort of assuming we're going to have a year-round representation from this, no problem. But that was just interesting, that perspective. Another non-voting taxpayer sent us a letter saying that the non-voting taxpayers took a position that without a survey, and they didn't ask, and they're split. Sort of like Nantucket was split and didn't take a position. Surfside was split and didn't take a position. I think the non-voting taxpayers are kind of split 50-50. And so that person was not happy that they took a position when it wasn't her position. So I think it shows sort of the difficulty we're gonna have. I think some of the changes you guys have proposed and made are positive. I think, if we can get the right people who are reasonable and can work together, and if we gather the right information. The one part I think is missing that kind of struck me is we need a representative for historic preservation. One of the positions in here, and it may be one of our at-large people, but someone who understands the impacts that are happening. I grew up on Center Street, like I said earlier, and our house, fortunately, my parents sold it to the Perry family, who is still there and hasn't changed it. But I think every other house around has been totally gutted, all the insides taken out, so that they could have 6 bedrooms and 6 baths, or 8 bedrooms and 8 baths. So the number of truly historic homes left, we want to make sure we don't incentivize their demise. And I think that this is, sort of making it as rentable as possible is making those incentives, and the tax credits are available that I talked about last week is making that more possible. So someone has to, I think, be on the board representing that position, and the HDC alone will not do it. Their jurisdiction is not the interior of buildings. And so, I think anyway, so I'm just putting that out there. I hope that that's considered when we're making appointments, or I hope it's given a spot at the table. The other question I had, we received a letter from Libby at 2:21 today. Please note, I spoke with town council today about the proposed membership of the committee. People who are involved in short-term rentals will most likely, depending on exactly what their involvement is, have a conflict. It may not make sense to appoint people with that connection to the committee because they will most likely have to recuse from discussion. There can, however, be public hearings at which any input can be provided from those involved with short-term rentals. So did you guys discuss sort of that aspect, and what is our thoughts on that as a committee and going forward?
Libby was going to talk about that after we did a basic update, but
all right.
If you want to, did you have a conversation with Mr. Giorgio today?
Yeah, it's pretty much outlined as Matt just read in the email, but town council will be on the meeting next week. So if there are questions about it, because it's apparently not as simple as saying if you are involved in the business of short-term rentals or have something to do with short-term rentals. So we're already, Jason and I were going back and forth with questions this afternoon. What if I rent my house for 1 week a year, my short-term rental? What if I do it once? What if I say I'm not going to do it again after I get appointed to the committee? Things like that. So I think town council can address those things, but I think the bottom line is, if you are involved today in some kind of short-term rental situation, whether you rent your house all summer just for the summer, or whether you rent it for a month, you're in the short-term rental activity level. So it's probably an issue, but John can speak to the sort of scope of it next week.
And to that point, I think when we develop an application for the at-large seats, or for any seats, having a clear understanding of who literally legally can serve and can't serve based on what criteria, we're going to probably need to ask people to answer a questionnaire so that we know we're not appointing someone who will then be found unable to serve because of a conflict of interest. And this is super complicated.
Are we going to have questions like, are you ever going to short-term rental your house? Do you think you will?
I'm pretty sure that future behavior can't be.
I mean,
but I know
this has always frustrated me, even with not having Melissa and Don here, because it's just, even if you own a property here, you potentially could do it
Right.
tomorrow at any time. So we all have agendas. So I get why the ethics committee, I get it, but it's frustrating when we're trying to lead and bring a group together that has all the experience. Like everybody on this that we vote will have an agenda, and we're trying to balance it out.
Believe me, I completely understand, and yet we have to have a legal and legitimate process that won't be challenged
Right.
legally.
And stop the work group and stop the progress.
And so that's why I keep focusing on extensive opportunity for community input, whether or not you have a voting seat, that you feel that your voice you have the opportunity to have your voice heard is a really important part of building consensus.
Right.
So whether this is public charrettes, surveys, whatever it is that becomes part of this process, it's going to be critical that people feel that their perspectives are being heard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I didn't bring it up to lock any particular groups out or to get a specific result. I brought it up because it is going to be, it's going to be a key part of how do we do this, and how do we do it so it's accepted by 80-90% of the community. There's always going to be, I think, a few people who won't be happy, but we need to get a broad consensus that we're moving this thing in a good direction.
Mm-hmm.
And we clearly haven't had that. We haven't had the work done, and we haven't had that consensus yet.
Right.
So I want this to be successful. And
one more.
Oh, yeah.
And I have to say, during that meeting, the process was almost modeled what I'm hoping for. There was really good discussion. We all listened to each other. We compromised. And to me, it felt like a really good start just from how that meeting played out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one solution that Libby and I were talking about, I think John Giorgio suggested it, was to have this work group would have public hearings. So everybody who, multiple public hearings. So people who do short-term rentals or rent for just 30 days, whatever it is, everybody's heard and everybody gets their perspective in there. Libby, did you have some, there's a couple other things I think you had on your list.
I was just going to mention that one of the other things that came up was engaging a facilitator.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems that people are really looking for a neutral person who perhaps doesn't have much knowledge of our current discussion here. So I will I put out a couple of asks to people I know who might know somebody up for this. So, but if anybody has suggestions about that, that would be helpful. And there was a suggestion to establish a centralized email that people could send inquiries to that could be checked by one person. So we'll work on that too. It's not set up yet, but it will be.
I think one thing that is hopeful is if you read sort of what Act Now is saying and what Nantucket Together is saying, and I think everybody wants a reasonable committee with people who are willing to work together and come to the best interest of the town, for the best interest of everybody as a community. They're all saying that. So I think that there's been, hopefully that means there's been a little progress and a little improvement of where we've, sort of been before. We will see.
Yeah, we're going to find a way for people to nominate those that can listen. When you feel really strongly about something, they can still listen. It's extremely hard to do, and I don't know how we find those people, or how do you get that out of somebody? But that's going to be our job to set this up for success. But part of this mission is, what does success look like? How do we know we did something? How do we do when we did this well?
What problems are there, and what are we trying to solve for, and what impacts are we trying to evaluate? Is also part of the question. And where we don't have information yet to evaluate potential impacts, we should be devising ways to find that information. Collect data or surveys or whatever, right? There's information we don't have yet that we will need in this process as a community.
And I don't know exactly what information you're talking about, but there has been a meeting with, there are a number of firms out there that help gather information, like where are the short-term rentals, how long. So we've already had a discussion with them, and with one of them anyway, and there may be a contract coming your way to start that.
Thank you, Libby.
That's great.
Yep. Some of this is similar to what happened back in the comp plan process. And what we tried to do, it was why I was talking about having, consensus and sticking on a point. We had a lot of things that were very contentious. And if one person in the room felt really strongly, we dug into it, or if there was information that needed to be gotten, you'd have to take the time and dig out that information, and then, get everybody fairly comfortable that they can live with that, and then move on. And I think that's, that is hopefully what we are replicating, that it's open and public and based on facts, and that we are not going to just push past things. So I think, we've done it before, and it was not easy, but it was important, and it helped. And so I think we can do it again. Mm-hmm. I think the facilitator will be, is crucial to that, or, how it's operating and how we do that, in ensuring that, like say we forgot historic preservation, and we, and if we get to the table and realize, oh, there is an impact on this part of our island that's really important, let's dig into that and see how much of that really is, and what are our choices? Well, how can we handle this? I think those types of things need to be on the table during these discussions.
And we do have existing boards and committees that have expertise that can be called in, if not in a seat in the work group, but they could be asked to provide their expertise to the work group.
Okay. Anything else, Libby, on this? Is there anybody here dying to talk about this? Even though we're going to be talking about the next agenda and the next agenda and the next agenda. If somebody wants to speak for 90 seconds on it, I'd be happy to entertain that. Roberto, you look like you're dying to say something. Everybody good? Okay. Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn? No.
Oh. Last item on the agenda.
Did I miss something?
What did we miss?
Did I miss that?
Which one?
That's already done. Libby did.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Were you napping, Ken?
No, I actually skipped around, so that's my fault, Ken.
Yeah.
I tried to move us too fast. All right.
Just for my, are you approving the concept of moving the one-way street from?
We're going to schedule.
Schedule hearing.
We approved the public hearing. Yep. Did you second that, Matt?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we are adjourned.
Really well. We'll see. Yeah.